Working from home today, needed to get some fresh air after the big client win we just had. How to save a client, over $50,000 straight off the bat. So with this client, I actually looked after both of her parents in aged care. Unfortunately, they both ended up passing away, and then she basically had about $500,000 headed her way. Now for her, she was aged in her early 60s. She was actually in receipt of a disability support payment. And she was quite used to, prior to this happening, and this is where inheritances can actually cause more problems for some people. So in this situation, basically, what was going to happen was that with the assets that she already had, she was going to get a reduction to her disability support pension quite significantly with some other assets, and her spending needs were fairly modest. So we did a few things. One of the things was we looked at her existing superannuation, and for her too, she was a widow. And so basically she had an adult son. And I'm going to talk about the super death tax as part of this too. So one of the things that we looked at doing was we made a contribution into her superannuation with the funds that came in. And what a lot of people don't know is that in accumulation phase for superannuation, if you're under the age of 67, it's actually not assessed. And if you've met your preservation age, generally speaking now about 60, or if you've ceased an employment arrangement with this person then your super becomes unrestricted, non-preserved, and you've got full access to it. But if you keep it in accumulation, it can actually hide it away for Centrelink purposes. The main downside is that it's subject to a 15% tax instead of 0, but it also means that you don't have to draw down on it. And in this situation would result in around about an extra $28,000 worth of disability pension. So very much worth it. So in this situation, what we also did was we looked at her superannuation, which was already entirely a taxable component, and she had her son listed as a beneficiary. Now, with a few $100,000 already in accumulation phase, what a lot of people don't realize is that if it goes to someone who's not a spouse typically, 17% of that will go to the taxman before it gets to that person. So there was an extra $34,000. Now, with this lady, she suffered from her own health conditions, and look, we just don't know with anyone, and she really wanted to make sure that her son was looked after more so. And there was some life insurance within her superannuation fund. She was adamant that she wanted to keep that, and that was okay. So we discussed about basically how the trade-off between the premiums that she's paying, other ways to do it, but she wanted the certainty of knowing, and it was a policy she'd already set up years ago. So keeping it in place was just fine. So basically what was going to happen is she was about to receive some money. She was about to get her disability pension cut off, lose all of her pensioner concession card and all of the other benefits that comes with the disability support pension. And if she did pass away, she would have been subject to a whole bunch of superannuation death tax. But as a result of the advice that we did, basically what we ended up doing was, and we also looked at her investment options within, they just weren't appropriate for someone. They were highly concentrated, and anyway, so we ended up looking at her investment options, toying around with them to make it something that was more suitable, made sure that she was actually looked after in the event of market movements, that we had certain buckets and other things set up, fairly standard. And then we made some contributions. We pulled some money out and we put some money back in to her superannuation in a very strategic way, which resulted in significantly less death tax. We put in a few other shelter strategies, and anyway, by the time we got everything in place, she's back on the full disability pension of $28,000 a year. She's got a whole bunch of funds that she's got access to, and she knows that not only is she looked after, but when she's not around, eventually her son he'll be looked after too in the way that she wants, and she's got that very strategically planned. So very satisfying way of looking after both generations in the family, and something that we do on a very regular basis. So just a quick one. Anyway, I have to walk back for my next meeting soon, but cheers.